What's up, Lions of Liberty fans? You can now support this show on Patreon and get exclusive access to bonus audio and video content, including Conspiracy Corner, Degenerate Gamblers, bonus segments with guests, and so much more. Head on over to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty.
Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another edition of Felony Friday, a weekly show right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, every week on Felony Friday, we focus on exposing injustice in the broken criminal justice system. And you know what? I'll tell you later about the other shows on the podcast. I'll tell you after I introduce my guest, because if you're watching the video of this, you can see I have a guest with me. And if you're not watching the video, if you're just listening, then you should probably think about joining the Lions of Liberty Pride. Then you'll be able to see right now who my guest is. And my guest, of course, is my good friend, JB Lubin. JB, welcome back to Felony Friday.
Thanks, Odie. It's good to be back. Though I might have to add, you did spring this video on me. I would have exfoliated or something if I knew this was going to be captured for everyone to see.
I love springing surprises on people without telling them. It just really, you really get to know someone that way. You see how they react. And I tell you what, you just rolled with it. You just said, all right, so we're going to do video. We'll do video. So.
Just the kind of guy I am, I guess.
So if you want to see what JB looks like, you join the Pride, go to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty, and you can see what we both look like. Fantastic. But if you don't care, then you can just listen and you can read along. You can play along at home, because this is an episode where we're going to be talking about a lot of felonies, trending in the news, a lot of criminal justice items, stuff like that. You can find all that stuff at lionsofliberty.com/FF126, because this is episode 126 of Felony Friday. That's how that works. So, JB, I don't even remember the last time you've been on. Normally, I've queued up the last time you appeared on the show. I don't have that, but it's been a while, man. When's the last time you were on? I know you've been on the Pride exclusive episodes and Conspiracy Corners. When's the last time you were on either an LILDL or
months? Maybe 4-6 months, maybe.
It hasn't been that long. Wow.
It might even be a conservative estimate. Honestly, can't remember the last time I've been on Felony Friday.
That's crazy.
I was starting to think that you didn't like me.
I've just had a lot of guests. I haven't had Rico on either for a long time. We had an emergency appearance.
Been blowing up. I've been really enjoying it. You've been getting some pretty interesting folks on there.
Yeah,
you don't need the likes of me mucking things up.
No, we need to muck things up every once in a while and get down in the dirt with some of these ridiculous criminal justice stories, ridiculous police abuse stories, things like that. And I think a good place to start. I'm just going to go totally off script here. Not off script, just not in order, because we did just have Memorial Day weekend last weekend, and there was a video going around. I think it happened on Saturday in Jersey. And as soon as I saw the video, I was like, yep, that's New Jersey. That makes sense. And what happened, I read this first on the Free Thought Project. I don't know if it was published somewhere else first. Probably not. But I will put the video on the show notes page. This was Wildwood, New Jersey. And Wildwood, New Jersey, there's been incidents with police officers doing crazy, crazy stuff before. There was a video of a cop just coming up behind someone a year or two ago and just punching them right in the back of the head. So they have a history there in Wildwood. Maybe a training issue, or maybe they're just scumbags. I don't know. But the video, and I could talk a little bit more about what each side says led up to it, which is probably somewhere in the middle of the two. But when you watch the video, what you see is basically a cop standing over and kneeling over this girl after knocking her down and punching her, striking her in the head with a closed fist. This is like a young girl, I think in her late teens, I'm pretty sure. And
I think she's 20, at least
20 years old.
Yeah.
And this is a pretty big cop. This is another cop standing around there too. I guess the lead up to it, the girl says basically she was there with her family, and the cop approached, asked if she was drinking, had her do a breathalyzer. She passed it. And then she said something. Oh, no. She said something like, you have something better to do today. Something like that. And the cop said, well, I was going to let you go, but because of that, we're going to arrest you. Asked for ID. She refused ID, et cetera, punched to the head. Now, the cop's story is that she was belligerent and kicked the cop in the balls. I don't know. I don't really believe the cop's story at all, but I don't tend to trust cops. So, JB, your first reaction after seeing this video, what do you think?
Well, the first thing I think is there's always a problem with me and, I guess, quote unquote, laws or edicts that are very subjective. And one of those would be excessive use of force. It's kind of like, it's one of those things like what they say about pornography where you know it where you see it. And this is one of those instances that even if she did kick him in the balls, I would classify that as excessive use of force for a 20-year-old girl. Look, considering the size of the guy who she was pitted against, quote unquote. Like, that's completely out of bounds. Like that could have been solved in a much more calm and amicable way without a grown man punching a girl in the head several times and beating her to the sand. It's just unnecessary and excessive. And I can't understand why, like, if there was even if there was something that she did that would escalate it to that point, I feel like that would have been captured on that video to reach that point that I feel like would probably not be justified at all. Unless she was like brandishing a weapon and trying to kill him, then maybe that level of force would be necessary to ensure the subduing of the perpetrator. But anything other than that, it's completely out of bounds. That's what my first thoughts were when I saw it. I don't know what you thought.
Yeah, you know how I know that if she did kick him in the balls, she didn't connect? Because the guy would not have been standing if she had connected. So, a little suspect if that even happened in the first place.
I too am. I'm pretty suspicious about that claim too.
Yeah, but I'm fully on board with you. I mean, it kind of makes you think. So what is that line? You have a 20-year-old girl. Like, when would the officer be in the right to be punching her in the head? If she's already tackled to the ground, I mean, unless she has a weapon, a knife of something, trying to just get her to drop the weapon, that would be it. There's no weapon. I don't see any reason for a big buff cop to be striking a 20-year-old girl in the head.
No, completely absurd, that response.
And
I don't know.
It's absurd that the cops, I mean, without batting an eye, try to justify it. They put these two cops, the one who was doing the head striking and the other guy that was there, put them on administrative leave. So
yes, paid, of course.
Yeah, of course it's paid. I'll push some paper around for a little while, then be right back on the street. So,
well, it's not like we've never seen it before.
Yeah, I know. And that's kind of the thing. You get desensitized to it because you see stuff like this all the time. And it's like the Free Thought Project. They have a video like this every 3 or 4 days. And you get desensitized to it and you come to expect it. And at the same time, you come to expect that, honestly, it could happen to anybody. I don't know. It's craziness. But I want to move on. And I did put out a message in the Lions Liberty Pride secret Facebook group asking if anyone had any stories that they saw recently that they want to talk about. And we got some submissions. One from a story back, I think this is back in February, in Richmond, Virginia. So there was a guy who was going around collecting tires and saying he was disposing of them, but he was just putting them all in his backyard of the house that he rented. And it ended up there were something like 1,500 tires in his backyard. The Richmond Public Works Department, I guess the neighbors called them and brought them in, but he ends up getting charged with a Class 6 felony for keeping these tires in his backyard. And it's crazy because I found 2 articles on it. In the second article, it's like a local news station went out to cover him cleaning up the tires, and it's him. Just hit my mic. And it's him putting the tires in the back of like a U-Haul truck, and this lady shoving a mic in his face. It's the most absurd thing you're ever going to see. And asking him questions: "Where are you going to properly dispose of these tires? What are you going to do?" And the guy's like, it's not answering the questions. And it turns out that the landlord actually paid for the U-Haul for the guy to take the tires, and apparently he was taking them to be disposed of properly. And then he was doing this all right before he had his court date. So the news team follows him. News must be slow there. The news team follows him there, and they show him running into the courthouse to make his appearance in court. And the cop ended up, I guess, dismissing the charges contingent upon the tires all being disposed of in an environmental way. So I guess the question here, JB, if we could play, is this a crime and should they do time for a minute? Is it a crime to store 1,500 tires in your backyard?
Well, I guess in the purest sense, no, it's not a crime if it's your property. And it certainly seems like the landlord is complicit in this if they're getting the U-Haul and trying to organize this. That was the first time, like, as absurd as the story was, the first time I raised an eyebrow while reading it was when the landlord was like organizing the export of these tires from the backyard. Because now I'm like, well, the landlord now is complicit in this, I guess, this tire recycling scheme that this guy is running. Like they're in this together. The landlord knows very well that there's a ton of tires in this backyard, and they're like into this together. I don't know what happened in the court proceedings. I'm not going to say that it's not a legitimate tire recycling business because I don't know. Maybe that was just a temporary storage area before they accumulated enough tires to make it, financially, sensible to push them all to the recycling center. But I guess in the purest sense, like if you own property, then you should be able to store whatever you want there if it's not causing some type of environmental concern to the surrounding area, which actually it does seem in the wording of the article that tires do pose some type of environmental risk. I'm not certain what that might be because I didn't really have a chance to look into what a bunch of tires in someone's backyard could do to me on the other side. But then, I don't know. Now you're like going into like in the inherent sense of property rights, can you do it? But then if you live in a community and you have certain guidelines to like not putting a bunch of trash in your backyard because, if I live next to you, I probably wouldn't appreciate it very much. It starts to get very gray, in a system like this. I probably would say you shouldn't do it, but I'm surprised it's a felony. I would probably treat it as something like, in certain municipalities, if you don't cut your grass when it's like 3 inches, you might get a ticket or something like that. That doesn't ever like transverse to the realm of a felony, which was actually pretty surprising to me. So I guess not a fine, but definitely a citable violation. Then I guess in terms of like the type of agreements that have been set forth for your community.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. If you're looking at it from like community and HOA, covenants and codes type thing, I could understand that. If I joined an HOA and it said you can't store 1,500 tires in your backyard, I would be like, okay, I'm probably not going to do that. I'm okay with signing on. And you know what? I don't want my neighbor storing, hundreds or thousands of tires in their yard because that could look bad if I'm trying to sell my house or.
Exactly. And that's the flip side of it. It's like if I own like an auto shop and I'm trying to get rid of old tires that I replace and I get in an agreement with a guy, I don't know if there's anything written or if it was a verbal contract, but if I say I'm giving you these tires to recycle and I'm paying you for them, I'm doing this so under the expectation that you are in fact recycling these tires and not dumping them somewhere. Mm-hmm. Despite the fact that it might be your own property, that's not what I signed up for. And there could be some case of fraud there in terms of the agreements that were set forth for this tire disposal from the presumably auto shops they were getting them from.
Yeah, I think that is fraud. It's hard. It'd be hard to calculate what the damages would be for something like that, but returning the tires and I guess people getting their money back, something like that. But yeah, you're making a promise by contract and not meeting that. If that's the case, I don't know. But it goes back to what you were saying. If this is a pure property rights issue, say there's no community regulations, there's no municipality regulations, anything like that. Just looking at property rights, if your neighbor is storing tires on their land, for it to be a violation of the NAP, of the non-aggression principle, we would have to somehow contaminate your land.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Some sort of smell that was so strong that made your land unlivable. And I'm sure some libertarians, even at that point, would argue against the smell not being a violation of the NAP. I would say that it would be, but I don't know. Tires probably aren't going to smell that bad. It's probably more likely that they start to decompose, get into the water, and then give your entire family cancer, something like that.
They most likely will attract vermin too. Those look like pretty good nesting sites. And now I have a bunch of rats in my basement because someone wants to keep 1,500 tires in their backyard. Probably wouldn't be too pleased about that.
Yeah. So it's probably a good idea to have something like that if you're going to have an HOA or something, and which is why a lot of these municipalities out in the suburbs have, and in cities have ordinances and things like that you can't store crazy stuff. And you could say that it's coercively put upon you. It is to some degree, but in a lot of the sense, especially with HOAs, you are moving there. You know what you're moving into. You read it, you sign it. So that's just the way it is, really. So I'm not going to argue with that. Speaking of vermin, speaking of pests, things like that, another story that was sent out in the Alliance of Liberty Pride Facebook group. This was, where was this? I'm not finding it. Here it is. Florida. Of course it was Florida. It was a Florida teacher that got in hot water, no pun intended, for drowning a raccoon in front of his students. So apparently this is pretty cool, actually. I don't know if it's a public school or a private school, but they were raising chickens. I'm assuming that they were doing it for the eggs, maybe not, but this class was raising chickens and something was killing them. And the teacher thought, or maybe whatever, trying to trap whatever it was, trapped a raccoon and assumed it was a raccoon killing the chickens, which is possible. I don't know if I've heard about raccoons.
It's unlikely, but possible.
You normally hear about coyotes, foxes.
Yeah. Birds, other birds. Yeah.
But it could have been more likely the raccoon was getting in there eating what the chickens were eating. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, or maybe even eating the eggs or the feed, most likely.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if it was actually killing, like hunting the chickens. That doesn't seem very raccoon-like behavior.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Raccoons normally go for the easy food, the garbage, the stuff like that. Anyway, so this causes an uproar, and he ends up getting charged. No, they didn't charge him. They were going to charge him, and they let it go, because it was ruled that it was what he did, because he drowned the raccoon in front of his students. They said it was not cruel or inhumane, which is true. Outside of shooting the raccoon in the back of the head with like a .22 from point blank range, which is probably the most humane way to kill an animal of that size, at least. Drowning is probably second to it, and I know this because I have some experience in this field. I have when I bought my house, we bought it knowing, and one of the reasons we got such a good price on it, we bought it from hoarders, and part of the stipulation of the contract was they had to get and they weren't hoarding weird stuff. They were hoarding like books and magazines and just crap. The entire house was full of just like paper, basically. But because of that, they didn't maintain the house, and they had allowed trees. They didn't maintain the outside. There were trees that were growing over the roof, and there were squirrels that were getting into the attic. So the first thing I had to do was go to the attic and capture the squirrels, which is what I did. I set traps and I caught them. And if you know anything about squirrels, unless you take them like across like 3 rivers, they're going to come right back to where they were nesting before. So I drowned them. Kill me. All right, send Pete after me. I don't care. And I drowned a couple of them. There were probably 3 or 4 that were getting in. I blocked off the rest of it so no more could get back in, replaced all the insulation, sprayed it, all disinfected. Was the worst month of my life doing that. I would not wish that upon anybody. It was horrible, horrible. But I will say that squirrels drown pretty quick if you do it the right way. I mean, they can't get out. It's not like a long death. It's not like you're torturing them. So that's my experience on that. My experience with squirrels. I have also done the same thing with chipmunks because they tear up a garden. But now that everyone probably hates me for killing squirrels and chipmunks, I'll toss it to JB to get your thoughts.
Well, since we're opening up to past sins, I would admit of having drowned a few mice that were stuck to glue traps back when I was young, because like this is why I don't use glue traps, because they're not quick and efficient. They don't like snap and kill. They just stick there. And I'm like, do I toss this mouse in the trash and let it die of dehydration slowly, glued to a thing?
What are you supposed to do with glue traps? Like pull them off and go release them somewhere?
I have no idea. The glue is so sticky. I don't even manage how you're going to pull a frantic wild rodent off that thing. Like, that's why they're like, some places don't even sell them because of that, because they don't kill. They just kind of trap, and like, there's nothing you can do after that. So I've dropped a few glue traps in some water just because I thought it was a quicker and more efficient death than, tossing it in the trash with a live animal stuck to it and have them die of dehydration, presumably. On the other hand, from someone who's, I don't know how close, but felt like they were almost drowning, it's entirely unpleasant experience. It's not nearly as quick as efficient as like a bullet to the head or maybe CO2 asphyxiation as they do in labs are, where you kind of just slow down and just sit or something like that. It's kind of like, for any animal that breathes air, drowning is probably very unpleasant. So I'm kind of conflicted as whether how humane drowning is, even though I've willingly admitted to doing it myself. It was better than the alternative. It's like I really didn't have a choice. I'm not, even if I had an access to a firearm at that point, I hardly think I was gonna pull a 22 on a mouse on a glue trap. Like, my options were limited, and it was my best option. But I don't know if it was quite this guy's best option. That's why I'm a little conflicted about this story. I don't necessarily think that he committed a crime. I don't think this guy should be prosecuted. It's not like he did it for any type of pleasure or anything, or like we even mentioned ourselves, that's anything that's like people don't actually do on a fairly regular basis when they're left with no other choice. But, I don't know. It conflicted is where this leaves me, but definitely not in the realms of like any type of, criminal pursuit of what this person did. He probably didn't have to do it in front of all the students. He could have maybe called animal control, and they could have euthanized these animals, in the way that they euthanize everything else. There were options. I feel like he probably could have handled that with a little more tact. I guess that's where I'm left.
My name is Dale Kearns, and I'm running for United States Senate in Pennsylvania as a libertarian. I'm a concerned citizen who has had enough. I work as a project manager for an electrical contractor in southeastern Pennsylvania. There I manage large commercial and industrial projects. I'm a husband and a father of 2 energetic little girls. I'm running to advocate for a society where my girls have more liberty, not less. Will you support our campaign? Unlike my competitors, I'm not a career politician. I don't have millionaire and billionaire donors. I'm running for Senate in Pennsylvania because I want to take the message to Washington that we want government out of our lives. Will you let me be your voice? Let me be the voice that says we will not walk quietly down the road to serfdom. The voice that says we need free market solutions. The voice that says we need to end the failed war on drugs. The voice who will fight for the forgotten man, non-violent offenders wasting away in prison, and addicts who are afraid to speak up and seek the help they need. We are seeking members for our campaign team. I encourage you to apply. We need donations to help us spread the message of liberty across the state. We can go on hoping for liberty to happen, or we can fight together. I hope you choose the latter and join me today. Find out more at dalekearns.com.
Paid for by Dale Kearns for office.
Yeah, I mean, I guess calling animal control was probably the easiest thing to do, but maybe the guy doesn't want to mess around with the state. It's a state-run organization, right? Animal control. I think it is.
That's true.
Maybe not, but yeah, he could have driven it and set it free. It might have come back. I don't know if raccoons are like that. But I think you do bring up a good point with drowning, but it's not like he's going to get a sword out and decapitate it. So I don't know. Definitely.
That's what I would have done.
Right in front of the students, bringing a sword. Tie it down. Oh, that'd be terrible. Anyway, moving on from that, let's talk about smooth transition. Let's talk about go across the pond to our friends in Great Britain, to EDL. I forget what EDL stands for. The founder, Tommy Robinson, he's been jailed for contempt of court because, if you didn't know, in Great Britain, they do not have freedom of speech. So keep that in mind when you're speaking out against Great Britain, because if you ever end up there one day, they might not like it. You might get thrown in jail for something you say. But I'm going to say it anyway. So the weird thing about this, and I'm not an expert in this case at all. I've read like 2 articles. And Tommy Robinson, he's one of those guys that goes by a fake name. It's not his real name. That's his Facebook name or Twitter name, whatever, performance name. He's very anti-Muslim. He's advocated for shutting down mosques, and essentially what he does and what he got arrested for is, in England, they have a rule that you're not allowed to report on a trial during the proceedings until it's concluded. So what he was doing is going outside all these trials that involved Muslims, and I think the one that they got him for in contempt of court was for either child molestation or child abuse of some kind, and he was following people in and out. I think not even the right people, not even the ones who were accused or were on trial, saying, you hope you have your bags packed and you're ready to go to jail, stuff like that. Which, you can think whatever you want about Tommy Robinson. I kind of compare him to not that they're even advocating for the same thing, but sort of this hateful, single focus ideology against one culture, really, or just I was going to say I compare him to Richard Spencer. I guess Richard Spencer is just for I don't know what one race or one religion. Tommy Robinson seems to be against just Muslims. So I'm not saying Tommy Robinson is a good person, but when they have this contempt of court stuff, and he's been targeted before by the police, he's thrown in jail without a trial. There's no freedom of speech. So that's not a good thing. And even if you don't agree with what he's saying, that's not a reason just to shut him up and throw him in prison. If anything, you want somebody like the reason we have the First Amendment, and JB, I'm ranting, I'll let you chime in here, but my understanding, the way that I understand it, and what I like about the First Amendment is it brings this abhorrent talk, these abhorrent emotions and feelings that people have. It brings them to the surface, and people are free to communicate freely about them, but they also have to defend them, and they also have to, deal with the consequences of being a hateful person. So allow that to happen. All this is going to do, all this really has done, is turn Tommy Robinson into a free speech martyr and raise him up into some kind of character person that I don't really perceive him to be at all. So what kind of thoughts do you have on this, JB?
Well, you've pretty much summed it up. Like, there's really no point to a right to free speech if it doesn't protect unpopular speech. That's the only reason the right to free speech exists. If you're only saying things that everyone approves of, what's the point of protecting it? It's for circumstances like this. Like, I haven't delved enough into this guy to say either way, but I'm almost 100% certain I probably wouldn't like this person and probably generally disagree with most of his views. But to shut him down and potentially put him in prison for what he thinks and wants to say is completely against, my ethical standing and the way I feel like the laws in any nation should be, regardless if this is the United States or UK or whatever. Like if you're a country that values rights and freedom as the UK claims to, and I hope they don't take this the wrong way because I'm an avid Arsenal fan and would like to go back to the country sometime soon. But these are the types of things that you should be protecting, things that you dislike. It's easy to protect speech you like. This is the point of it. This is entirely the point. Discussing things that you don't agree with, this is the time to show your mettle and show that you believe in these freedoms. Not when it's easy, when they're saying things you agree with. That's how I see it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, and I always say this, left and right, I always say people on the left, but it's really not that simple because, you put people in a category, people don't break down like that. But I think people on the right, a certain percentage, are just as guilty of it. So it's really that authoritarian group on each side that really don't understand that. And it's crazy to think that, do any countries in Europe have anything compared to the First Amendment?
I don't know. Not that I'm aware of, because I know the UK clearly doesn't. I know France, there are definitely types of speech that are not protected, especially things concerning Nazism, for example, can land you into legal trouble. So I know they don't have a carte blanche when it comes to free speech. There are certain things that you cannot say or you can be prosecuted. Likewise with Germany, for obvious reasons, and along those same veins. Well, those are the countries I know the best. I can't speak for places like Luxembourg and things of that nature and how their laws go. But I could probably safely say for all the major nations, their right to free speech isn't as broad as ours is.
Well, congratulations. You're now our new European correspondent for Lions of Liberty.
I'll do my best.
But I forget where I was going with that, but I mean, it doesn't seem like we're that far. I guess my point is we're not that far from getting to that point here in the United States, I don't think. I think there's people on the right and left that would support sort of similar things like you're not allowed to be a Nazi. You're not allowed to say bad things about Muslims. So, I don't know.
You're not allowed to protest the flag, or you're not allowed to do that. Any number of things that people don't like. I'm sure there are segments of both sides of the political divide, quote unquote, that if given the opportunity would probably try to outlaw, despite the fact that flies in the face of the rights that they claim to hold dear on both sides. They both, it's amazing on both sides. They do, I feel in their minds at the very least, they feel like they're wholeheartedly committed to this Bill of Rights and the things that are put in this as our natural rights as citizens that we should be able to do. But as soon as, something happens that they disagree with, it's like they forget it. It's all of a sudden, it's like it's all just words on a page to them, and they're just trying to stamp it down as best as they can. And you're right, it does seem that way, but I tend to have more faith. There have been lots of times where things were more tenuous than they are now. Like if they didn't get rid of like free speech during like 1969, during the height of like Vietnam in 68, are they going to get rid of it now? It's kind of like I have more faith in our institutions that it'll hold on a little bit longer. And this phase, which I'm calling a phase of liberal absurdity, will pass and things will, level back to the mean.
Well, I think we're seeing, and I think you're right. I don't think we'll see like the First Amendment overturned or anything like that or thrown out, because there's just not for that to happen, to line up, what, like 2/3 of the states have to sign off on it, or there has to be a constitutional convention or something like that.
It seems almost impossible to me for that to happen.
But I think what is happening, and what will probably continue to happen, is you have these large tech companies, of course, like Google, Facebook, Twitter, etc., who are really controlling speech in their own within their own systems. And there's a lot of libertarians that would immediately respond to that and say, well, that's their company, they can do as they please, which there is some truth to that, but there's also truth that a lot of these companies, through contracts with the government, are sort of arms of the government because they're entangled and they're underneath government control, government regulations. So I don't really buy that. And the other thing, I forget where I was going with that. I had a second point. I'll come back to it. Tell me what you think about that.
I remember we talked about this before, because I guess I do fall in that camp that you had mentioned before. I guess the libertarian camp. It was like, well, they're private companies. If they have a platform and they say you can't do certain things, I don't think that, first of all, I literally cannot force them. And I don't think it's my right to use the force of the government to force them. Unless, of course, what you're saying is true. If they become literally an arm of the government, then they have to uphold and respect all the laws that the government does. The government is not allowed to infringe upon free speech. So then any institution that operates within the governmental sphere has to abide by those rules as well. So it all comes to the point of, when exactly does that occur? Does it have to fall? Does YouTube have to be literally under the Department of Commerce before that happens, or whatever the FTC is under? I'm not quite sure what department that falls under. Maybe it's Commerce. I don't know. But
who cares?
Yeah, who cares? Anyway, like when do you decide? Like, how can you say that? Is it a certain number of government contracts? Is it like we now broadcast everything that happens in C-SPAN, or we have exclusive rights to certain things? How do you make that determination? When does a private company no longer become private?
Well, I think it's a combination. One aspect that gets overlooked is these companies are so huge. They have so much money to lobby the government, that they can lobby for regulations and legislation that really makes it so expensive that competitors are not able to get in to compete with them. And I don't have any examples of YouTube doing something like that, but it could easily happen. So when you have things like that happening, that sort of crony forcing of a monopoly, really building, it's sort of what Uber has done. And we're getting sort of off topic here. We're talking about First Amendment, but now we're talking about monopolies and oligopolies, things like that. People give Uber all kinds of credit. And I think Uber did a nice job paving the way, but the problem is they built up walls around them again, so the competition couldn't get back in a lot of these municipalities. And I forget Uber's founder's name, but he is a bulldog, and he would go into these cities and just steamroll the city councils or whoever he was dealing with, or the people with the state he was dealing with, and get Uber in, and then say, all right, now that Uber's in, let's not anyone else in, because that'd be too dangerous. We have these certifications here. Our drivers are doing this. And I mean, you're starting to see Lyft get in almost equally to Uber. But really, it should just be ride sharing. It's a thing now. People should be allowed to compete. But it's to the point that you can't. I mean, you and I, we could try to start up a ride sharing service tomorrow. But to scale it to the point to compete with Uber or Lyft is probably impossible.
Well, that's true. But I think what you're referring to is like protectionism. And that's not a flaw of Uber per se. It's a flaw of government. The government is set up in a way to facilitate these things from happening. Like, I'm not saying that morally the CEO of Uber should be putting artificial barriers in the way of anyone who's coming in their wake. But if government allows these types of things to occur, should I really blame him for taking advantage of it?
Well, I think that's a good point, and I'm not comparing you to Donald Trump, but that's the exact same thing that Trump said when people bring up eminent domain. I'm just doing what the law allows me to do. Why wouldn't I take advantage of the laws in the books? Totally understand where he's coming from there, and I think I do agree with you that I'm certainly not going to think anymore of Donald Trump or of the Uber founder, forget his damn name, but there could be people to make examples of it. And as libertarians, we should be pointing this stuff out and not just be blindly, not saying that I'm not saying all libertarians blindly praise Uber, but there is a lot of, at least from my perspective, some just blind praising of Uber for making, ride sharing and really completely disrupting the industry and changing it, which they have done. But I don't know.
I'm all for increased competition. And if Uber is doing something to stifle competition in its wake of success, I guess, I don't even know if we can even call it success yet. I don't know if they've turned a profit yet, because last I heard they haven't. So I don't even know if I can quite yet qualify this as a success. But just opening up, because there was really like a cabal in terms of like taxi services, like you need all these licenses, you need this, you need that, like $1 million badges in New York. It was insanity just to give someone a goddamn ride around a city when everyone owns cars. All of this was insanity. So to be able to break down those barriers and open the market, I'm 100% for. And I guess that's where all the libertarian fanboys are falling in, because they see that aspect. I'll honestly admit, I don't know anything about any Uber government manipulation to shut the door behind them. Would I be surprised if they're doing it? Absolutely not. Like I would go as far as suspecting that they're doing it. I have no proof of this.
I'll dig up some articles. We've had conversations on it before in the forum, so I'll try to link some articles.
Yeah, like I said, I'd even go as far as suspect that they're doing it, because that's what everyone does, and now we're right back where we started. So I don't approve of that either. But now this is down to the role of government. Government were the ones who set up the roadblocks for Uber to break down in the first place, and they're the ones who are building it behind them.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of the governments that Uber is doing this with, they're state and local governments. It's not the federal government.
Does it matter?
I know. I'm just.
Do I think the city of Philadelphia can stomp on my rights just because they're not seated in D.C.?
I 100% agree with you, but I think we lose focus of that. Not me and you, collectively as libertarians, or collectively as just people, and we look to the federal government. We point a finger at them. When in reality, you could probably make just as big a difference. And you probably locally, libertarians, it's our only chance, not our only chance, but our best shot to make a difference is by getting involved in our local community politics to deliver a little more liberty in the near term. When I say near term, 5-10 years, to really change federal politics, to get multiple libertarians elected to the Senate and Congress and the presidency. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, decades at the very least. Hopefully I'm wrong, but anyway, the founder of Uber, Travis Kalanick, that's the guy I'm thinking of. There's also, it's two founders, Garrett Camp. I've never heard of him, but Travis is the guy I was thinking of. Anyway, we got way off topic there, but that's why we do this. We were going to talk about this animal cruelty, and we're kind of running out of time. I don't know if you want to touch on it. The story was out of Florida, I believe. And essentially what was happening, there was a group, Animal Recovery Mission. And there's actually a friend of, my wife and I have a friend who is a local news reporter down in Florida who is doing something with the reporting on this. I don't know if she did everything, all the reporting. But apparently this guy, the guy who founded the group, Richard Couto, C-O-U-T-O. How would Brian McWilliams say that? New game. Apparently this guy walks around like he's in the military, and what they're doing is they're staking out really slaughterhouses or just farms, and looking for looking for red flags, looking for people breaking the law. And in a lot of these cases, what they've done is they've videotaped pigs being slaughtered, cows being slaughtered, et cetera, and just to show that picture and raise alarm and this horrible stuff happening, when in reality it's not against the law to slaughter. I mean, they're saying they're not licensed to do it, but it's not against the law to slaughter animals if you're consuming them yourself, but they're saying they're giving them away or they're selling them. And then you brought up, JP, I missed it in this article, but there is an accusation of them selling horse meat. Is that right?
Yeah. Which hasn't been proven. I think the article tried to make clear there was just some allegations. I think they did get some meat samples that were tested to be horse, but I don't know if they can trace it back to the farm per se. It's very confusing. Like, it doesn't seem like they have much on these people in terms of any actual criminal wrongdoing, which is the way that actually the couple of articles, because they both came out of Lee County, Florida, they're kind of linked together in terms of some things that are going down there.
Yeah, and I haven't looked into the background of this, of the guy who founded this animal recovery mission. But my understanding is it's really everyone that he's targeting, they're immigrants, I'm pretty sure. And I'm assuming this guy is, I mean, if you're targeting people, assuming he would be sort of a Trump guy. I don't know if he's trying to get people deported. Maybe I'm way off. I should probably do more research before making an accusation like that. But I don't know. I guess the bottom line is I'll link to these on the show notes page, and you guys can read them yourselves. There's like, if you Google this, it's a pretty big investigation this local news team is doing here. And there have been charges filed. There's also been some thrown out. So check it out yourself, and maybe we'll weigh in on it at a later date. And that's all I got, JB. You got anything else you want to tell the fine Felony Friday people?
No, I have 100 things to say about these articles, but I guess it's going to have to wait for another time.
Yeah, what else?
Or maybe the forum.
What else do you have to say?
No, it'll take way too long to unpack. Way too long.
Give us a nugget. Give us a nugget. Give us something.
I don't even know where to begin. But you do know I'm a vegetarian, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about it from that aspect.
Well, I'll just leave these, especially when it comes to the horse regulations, which is really one of the only things they could probably hit them on in terms of the law. I don't understand if you eat meat, what certain types of meat are special. If you eat meat, you eat meat. If some people want to eat horse, I don't see how it's any different from eating a cow.
It's because horses have names like Daisy and
cows have names. People name their cows, especially dairy cows that you have for a long time. They get names like Bessie and stuff. That's a classic cow name. Tell me you've never heard Bessie the cow before.
Yeah, Bessie the cow.
Of course. You see? Yeah, but that's a little piece.
Probably, I'm assuming horse meat is not very good because horses run a lot and it's not very fatty, I would assume.
I don't know. They eat it in Europe, so.
Do they?
Some places.
Really?
Yeah. You can buy it in France.
So how long have you been a vegetarian for?
A while now. What year is it? Over a decade.
Really? Holy crap.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew last time I saw you were a vegetarian, so I knew it was at least 4 or 5 years, but.
No.
Okay. What are you going to eat at Pork Fest? Is there going to be any vegetables?
I thought that was just a name.
Yeah, it's actually, it's Porcupine Festival. So.
Yeah. I didn't think I'd have to eat actual porcupines. Sure, it's pretty gamey. It's probably like rabbit, which I've had before.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure porcupine would not be very good. Speaking of Pork Fest, yes, we are going to Pork Fest, and we're looking forward to it. That's going to be coming up on 3 weeks, something like that. We'll be going to Pork Fest, so that's going to be here before we know it. And you can help us out. You guys sent us there. You gave us the money to get there. We thank you for that. The Lions of Liberty Pride is giving us the money to get there. Mark and I will be going to the LNC convention in New Orleans, which is right before the 4th of July, giving you some interviews from there, live coverage, stuff like that. So we're looking forward to that. We still kind of need really a little more funding to get there. We're just assuming it's going to come in. So if you haven't joined the Pride yet, watching this episode of Felony Friday on video is one perk. And another perk would be all the other stuff we have, Conspiracy Corner, shows, Degenerate Gamblers. We're recording an episode of Libertarians and Libertarians Drinking Liquor, which I'm assuming will air right around the time as this comes out. Are you on that, JB, tomorrow?
Tomorrow? I don't think so.
I think Mark thought you might be, but you could.
I might be.
Yeah, you can be if you want to.
If you hear my voice, then I am. Then
yeah, there's no limit. We're gonna try to get as many people on there, as many Lions of Liberty on there as we can, and it's just gonna be only available to Pride members. So join at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. That's all I got. JB, got anything to say? Anything? Parting words of wisdom?
No, I've said my piece.
All right, well, this is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.